Hello, my name is Cheryl. Thank you for joining us today for the reopening of Reflections at Bukit Chandu. Reflections at Bukit Chandu, or RBC, first opened its doors in 2002 to tell stories of the sacrifice and bravery of the soldiers of the Malay Regiment during the Battle of Pasir Panjang. It was closed 3 years ago for a revamp. Today, my colleagues and I from the National Museum of Singapore are excited to present its reopening. To begin, we'd like to invite our guest of honor, Dr. Muhammad Maliki bin Osman, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office and Second Minister for Education and Foreign Affairs, to present his opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. 79 years ago, in February 1942, the men of the Malay Regiment defended Pasir Panjang Ridge against the invading Japanese army during World War II and fought to the end in the Battle of Singapore. Among them was Lieutenant Adnan Saidi, whose name is associated with courage and heroism even today. Lieutenant Adnan rallied his platoon and embodied his parting words, Biar, putih, tulang, jangan, or better to die than to live in shame. Even though episodes like these took place before the independence of Singapore, they are the indelible milestone events of our country's history. Knowing our history is important for every citizen. First, history shapes our national identity. It helps us to understand how Singapore has evolved over time and reminds us of the shared experiences and values that shape us as a nation, regardless of our backgrounds. As we continue to plug into the fast-changing and globalized world, we must also remain anchored in our common identity and values as a nation. Second, history plays unique dual roles, both as a rallying call of hope and a cautionary tale. The stories told at the Reflections at Bukit Chandu remind us that all communities played a role in defending Singapore. These stories encourage us to be confident in Singapore's future, know what we have today is worth defending and fighting for, and convict us to work towards a better world. Therefore, our future generations must continue to learn about our history. Our students learn about Singapore's experience during World War II, including the story of Lieutenant Adnan and the Malay Regiment, through the social studies and history curricula at the primary and secondary levels. Such deep understanding and appreciation of history will help every generation to be wiser, better, and stronger. History is made even more alive through physical sites such as Reflections at Bukit Chandu. These sites offer us a portal to the past and nurtures a sense of place and connection with our heritage as we chart our future together. Reflections at Bukit Chandu, or RBC, was first opened on 15 February 2002 by the National Archives of Singapore on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the fall of Singapore. It tells the story of the Malay Regiment and how they exemplified the spirit of duty, honor, and commitment of those who fought valiantly during the war. Its management was subsequently transferred to the National Museum of Singapore, and it was then closed for a major revamp in 2018. The newly revamped RBC is the latest addition to the World War II interpretive sites under the National Museum, complementing the overview of the history of the World War II in Singapore told in the National Museum and the recently reopened Changi Chapel and museum story of the prisoners of war and civilians interned at Changi prison camp. Together, these three institutions ensure that stories of courage and resilience continue to inspire and remain relevant to our lives today, especially as we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the fall of Singapore in February next year. RBC offers immersive experiences and contextual artifacts for the multifaceted look at the Malay Regiment, from the regiment's formation to its action in World War II, as well as the ultimate battle here and its aftermath. The narrative has been enhanced with displays of new artifacts, such as spent British Army bullets that were uncovered in an archaeological excavation of the grounds of RBC. The narrative is also made more immersive through the use of digital technology, such as that used in a multimedia show that depicts a battle scene at the Battle of Pasir Panjang. The centre also highlights aspects of the pre-war history of the bungalow and the site it stands on, which are new features. For example, a gallery about the opium packing plant gives visitors insight into how Bukit Chandu got its name and the history and use of opium, as well as the anti-opium measures taken in Singapore at that time. Installations on the grounds of RBC relate to the stories of the Longyaman and the Olang Salat and the pineapple plantations that used to populate the area. The landmark Longyaman or Dragon's Teeth Gate comprised imposing rocks which marked the entrance of Keppel Harbour. For centuries, these waters were also home to Orang Salat communities who dwelt on boats with thatched roofs. I'm heartened to hear that during the process of the revamp, the museum's curators closely engaged academics, members of the public such as the Malay community figures, museum volunteers, guides, students and youth for their feedback. On behalf of the National Museum, I would like to thank all those who have contributed your valuable insights as they helped us ensure that RBC remains relevant and relatable to Singaporeans. RBC reopens to the public tomorrow, 9 September, with a series of programs this weekend to commemorate the anniversary of the end of the Japanese occupation in Singapore on 12 September 1945. As you visit and experience the new RBC and learn about the heroism of the Malay Regiment, I hope that you will reflect upon the importance of values such as duty, commitment, and resilience in the face of adversity. In these challenging times, these values that embody the Singapore spirit will always help us stand in solidarity and pull through and emerge stronger as a nation. Thank you.
To mark the reopening, we are honoured to have Mr. Nur Aqmal bin Muhammad Nur, a local poet and singer-songwriter, to share his special poem with us, titled Tanah Sang Perwira, or A Hero's Land, pays tribute to the heroism of the Malay Regiment soldiers.
Tanah Sang Perwira. Ini bukan tanah Sang Perwira yang matinya mainan Tuhan-Tuhan dunia. Ini tanah perwira, sumpah setia pada nama, negara dan bangsa. Tanah jadi saksi berdelan motar, asap dan peluru, bom dan senapang bertabur jadi pusaka. Tanah jadi saksi siksaan dunia antara insan-insan menyemai kebencian, lalu hilang peri kemanusiaan. Tanah jadi saksi bicara pena pada kertas dalam janji tak tertunas, merdeka dirampas-rampas. Tanah terus jadi saksi. Setiap nama wira setia pada tanah, pada tembok tugu, jadi parut pada hati. Setiap ibu, ayah, saudara, anak dan istri akhirnya Akhirnya keperwiraan hadir. Keamanan mekar saat ketakutan lebur. Meski jasad terkubur.
Thank you, Aqmal, for that moving tribute. Next, we'd like to invite Mr. Yatiman Yusof, who was crucial in the establishment of Reflections at Bukit Chandu, to share his insights with us.
I think when we first thought about this idea, underlying the thinking was that Singapore lacks the historical memories that can be shared generations after generation. Reflection at Bukit Chandu can bring back the minds of the younger generation through display of a lot of artifacts, storytelling, to show that there were occasions where our very survival was being threatened. The Second World War and the occupation of the Japanese on Singapore and Southeast Asia was one of those that need to be remembered and brought forward. The Malay Regiment, led by Lieutenant Adnan Saidi and his team, small group fighting the onslaught of the Japanese army in the Second World War, sacrificed their life for love of Singapore. Even though at that time the army was British army, but the Japanese were occupying Singapore, they call it Tanah Tumpah Darah, where they were born and grew up here. So I think that was the essence that will have to be inculcated among the younger soldiers of Singapore. We can be trained in terms of skill in fighting, strategy in our war, in fighting the oppositions. But I think the inner part of each soldier in Singapore is to learn to love the country and to be able to prepare to sacrifice their life, if necessary, for the survival of the country. We did not have Singapore very easily in our hands. They are not handed over to us on a silver platter, but at one time in our history, we fought with our blood, our tears, and our life to protect Singapore. This is the essence they wanted to drive home to the young Singaporean. So when we undergo difficult time in life, you see whether we are behaving like what the Malay saying, when the godown is under fire, the rats ran away, Bila rumah terbakar, tikus habis lari. All of them left the country. So this is the essence of the importance of reflections at Bukit Chandu. Thank you for taking me around and showing me what you have now. Compared to 17 years ago, when we first put all the things together here, we have made a lot of improvement, and the place is more visitors friendly. You have command the audio-visual impact. I think the first one was to get the picture, the real picture of the Malay Regiment up front, so you know how they look like, how they were being trained. So that is being very helpful. Do come here, have a visit, observe some of the artifacts that we may not have seen in our lifetime, and learn about the history of our beloved country, Singapore, of the fighters that Singapore has, that make Singapore a country that can be respected by the world.
Thank you, Mr. Yatiman, for sharing your insights with us. Last but not least, our curator, Rachel, will bring you around to show the newly revamped facilities. But before we say goodbye, We'd like to thank you for your time in joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you soon at Reflections at Bukit Chandu. Thank you.
Welcome to Reflections at Bukit Chandu. We are now standing outside a 91-year-old bungalow close to Point 226, a strategic position defended by the men of the Malay Regiment during World War II. The galleries here pay tribute to that valiant action, as well as invite the visitor to learn more about the history of the regiment and the bungalow on the hill. In 1933, 25 men were gathered at Port Dickson. They had been selected from hundreds of applicants to form what was then known as the Experimental Company. They were put through rigorous physical training, including training with weapons and ceremonial drills. This video shows the kind of training that they went through, including what is possibly the only known video footage of Lieutenant Adnan Saidi. The men's hard work paid off, and they were soon known for their smartness and discipline. In 1935, they were renamed the Malay Regiment, and a year after that, the first 4 Malay officers were commissioned into the British Army. This walking out dress was designed specially for the regiment by their first commander, Major George Bruce. It was based on the traditional baju Melayu and featured the colours green for Islam, yellow for Malay royalty, and red for the British Army. The songkoks that the men wore featured the regimental crest, which comprised a crown, 2 tigers, a cuirass and scabbard, as well as the regimental motto Ta'at Setia, faithful and true. By December 1941, the Malay Regiment had been expanded to 2 battalions, both of which were involved in the defence of Malaya and Singapore. While the 2nd Battalion engaged the Japanese earlier on in the Malay Peninsula, the 1st Battalion was assigned to Pasir Panjang. This entrenching toolset was issued to servicemen of the British Army and would have been used by the regiment to dig trenches and other fortifications in preparation of the Japanese invasion. When the Japanese finally attacked, they bombarded these trenches with heavy artillery fire, inflicting many casualties. The bravery of the soldiers was apparent, particularly that of C Company, which was assigned to Point 226 on Bukit Chandu. Here, the outnumbered company made its last stand. The first Japanese party, disguised as Indian soldiers, was quickly driven off by Lieutenants Adnan and Abbas Abdul Manan. 2 hours later, the Japanese attacked again in overwhelming numbers. C Company waged a desperate battle that descended into hand-to-hand combat until they were finally overwhelmed. More than 100 men of the Malay Regiment were killed during World War II, including Lieutenant Adnan, who was executed after the Battle of Bukit Chandu. In their heroism and courage, they stayed true to Adnan's belief: death before dishonour. While the bungalow had been used for storage during the war, it actually dates back to around 1930, when it was built for officials of the nearby opium packing plant. The plant also gave Bukit Chandu, or Opium Hill in Malay, its name. About 350 women used machines to pack and seal processed opium into metal tubes. They could produce up to 600,000 tubes a day. In the lounge, occupants would have been able to relax and enjoy the view. An archaeological dig in 2019 unearthed some stories of the bungalow through personal artifacts that had belonged to people who had once been here. Pasir Panjang itself has had a long history. In the past, one could see Long Yaman or Dragon's Teeth Gate from here. The rocky outcrops helped to aid sailors in navigation, along with the Orang Selat, or people who lived around the straits. Bukit Chandu has been the site of so many stories over the years. We hope that by visiting, you will be able to uncover them with us.